All right, hey guys, Sam in the studio, not in your Witness Studios, but I am in Mike Avenaim studio here in Hollywood. And is that where we are? We're in Hollywood?
I mean, pretty much.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So, and Mike and I just worked on a song together. He did some drum tracks for me with this beautiful kit right here and his gear. And we got to talking about something that is just really been passionate about studying the craft and the art of music and songwriting, but kind of down an avenue of writing stuff that would find a home or find a place on TV, commercial, film, so in the licensing and sync market. And I didn't even know that Mike was so well versed. We got to like talking, and I realized right away as we're chatting, he started showing me some songs that he's cue stuff that he's done for TV shows. Had stuff on movies too.
Yeah, all different types of things. I guess once you're in that world, you got to try and do everything that's appropriate for all that stuff. It's all a little different. Each avenue's a little different.
So it was great. We got to talking about it, and I'm learning stuff even just right being here, having these great conversations. So give us, Mike, just a little bit of your history of kind of like what brought you to music and the little path. Give us the 1 minute scoop on.
I think my whole in a nutshell, my uncle's a musician, my dad's really musical, so I was kind of in that thing growing up, and my uncle's also a drummer and has done a ton of stuff and jazz records and experimental records and ran a big music festival in Australia for international acts, so I grew up in that environment, and he taught me, pretty much essentially in the beginning how to play drums, and my mom was really forceful on wanting me to play not only the drums, so I went to school for tune percussion, so I guess that's where I get my knowledge of any kind of harmony things from. Nice. And then progression wise after that, just really I played drums and been on tours and done lots of records, and more of a curiosity thing as a musician that I want to play like every instrument I can possibly figure out or own, and I just love equipment and gear and stuff, so I want to play guitar and bass and harpsichord and like whatever I can do to make it cool. And because of that, that kind of pushed me into that realm of composition.
Yeah, and Mike showed me again some songs, and I'm sitting there thinking like, what guitar player, bass player did he get to play with this? And he's like, no, this is all me. I'm like, oh man, the guy plays like everything. So it's awesome. It's so cool. And the conversation that we just candidly started having, which I wanted to try to pass along to my YouTube channel watchers, was just about, again, this whole licensing and sync. And you said a couple great things about doing this type of songwriting. Give us what's your take on kind of, as you are more and more in this room kind of crafting and creating songs that have that aim, that goal, that bullseye?
Yeah, I think the number one thing, and like we talked about, the number one thing is I think all of us as composers or musicians or whatever, when we do our own music, you immediately have an emotional connection to that music because you're pouring your heart and soul and your creativity into it. So it makes it hard when somebody says, "Oh, we love this song, but we're only going to offer you a very little amount of money." And then you're stuck in that thing of like, well, do I put it out because it's cool to have my music out, or do I hold on to it for the bigger opportunity? And I've just learned over time, like, it's cool to have like the greatest songs ever, but if the bigger opportunity never comes, you've just got a hard drive full of music that you never do anything with. Yeah. No one hears it. And I was that person. I have had so much stuff. This is a great song. I'm going to save it for, whoever. And, and 7 years later, it's still there.
Still there, yeah.
So I just, I had a friend that, does a lot of the licensing stuff, and he made it really clear to me, if you're going to do this type of work, make sure that you make really great music that you can disconnect from. So you write it with the intent of, you obviously you care about it, but you're writing it with the intent of it not being something that you're like, this is for me, this is my emotional thing. So then, you got to get into the frame of mind, like, how do I create the best piece of music that I can create, but still be happy giving it away for $200 or $20,000?
Yeah. That's awesome.
Because sometimes, the product should never be different. as far as I'm concerned. Like,
Yeah.
your $20,000 submission should be the same as your $200 submission,
Yeah.
because you still did it.
Yeah.
So, like, you don't want to be that person that's, like, doing better work for somebody. Then it should always be good.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, like, you know, that took me a fair amount of time to just get used to being able to pump out this music quickly and have it be really high quality, and just it's not that I don't care, but just that I'm not emotionally connected to the piece.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a lot easier to, like, get it out there once you're in that frame of mind.
Yeah, and even in here tonight, just working, and Mike's getting phone calls from, and again, it's licensing stuff, which is awesome for you, and it's like, hey, we need this, and we got to turn it around quick, and so it's going, and I think that's awesome. That's cool that you've been able to work in that. We were kind of talking about, too, just even different forms of, like, how stuff makes it into licensing and sync, and just the way that the music industry has changed in the last, it feels like 10 years, and so more of the artist, like, again, we were talking about, you might have a band like the Lumineers, and they're like a band, and they're like a touring band, and they're out there trying to make it, and they happen to write a really catchy song that works for licensing and sync. So that's kind of like one avenue, and I'm sure at some point they have to go through the same thing of, like, okay, we wrote this song, and it's like a piece of us in our, you know, and is it like slumming the song out to have it, like, on, you know, whatever car commercial or whatever it is. But it seems like now the artists and the musicians have to really think about, if they're going to make a living at it and pay the bills and health insurance and have a family and have a home, seeing sync and licensing as a valid way that they can, like, pay those bills, and I don't know, like, maybe not, it's like what you're saying, it's like how much you, like, kind of, like, hold on to, like, what you're working on, but at the same time, I'm sure when you get that $20,000 check for something that you did, that's a validation thing. Like, right there, it's like, wow, something, you poured yourself into something, and then you get to turn on the television or go on YouTube and pull up a thing and hear your music in there. Yeah.
Big you are of an artist or whatever, you still, there's still value in your work.
Yeah.
But if it is your job, you know, and you're being hired to create a piece of music for whatever, then you have to be in the mindset that you're not gonna beat yourself up if in the next, you know, day you write the coolest song you've ever written for this thing, and then you're like, well, you know, I'm not going to give it to them because it's the best song I've written. Yeah. Whereas, like, I've, you know, I'm not saying I've written the best songs ever. I have not. But I have written compositions that, like, I have a brief and I write this thing, and then I'm like, man, this is a good song. Like, I really got, like, oh, my guitars sound really good on this. Or the drums sound great. I've never had that, you know. But I've gotten to a point where I'm just like, cool, like, those people are going to love it. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not even about whether I'm attached to it for something else. Like, I think we can all continue to create really great things, and we learn from engineering our own stuff and mastering and mixing and doing and having friends and talking about how to do it. That I feel like I'm just learning, you know, how do I make my guitar sound really good? And this particular song is going to teach me how to have a really big rock guitar sound so that the next time I get called to do it, I can do it, you know? And that's awesome. Where I treat those, like, learning experience and emotional connections are more from the learning curve and the creative process. Yeah. Because everyone still wants those things. You know, if somebody says to you, hey, we want this to sound like Red Hot Chili Peppers. Yeah. They really want it to sound like Red Hot Chili Peppers. It's not like a thing where you can program your drums and do that and just kind of slap the bass and you've got that. You really, you know, they want it to be just like it. Yeah. So, you know, you got to figure it out.
Yeah, it's like getting in the mind of the sonics behind something and figuring out how to recreate that. And there's an artistry in that too. I think, again, I've been in a world of living with songwriters. I mean, I'm talking like songwriter guys that like one of my good friends, I lived with him for years, and he, in the middle of the night, I'd hear guitar coming from his room, and I'd peek in his room, and there he'd be at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the middle of the night, and I'd be like, what are you doing, man? And he's like, oh, I had something, and I have to get it out right now. It was like, almost like he was working through his life, his like emotions and everything. And that has a connection to that kind of songwriting. And then, you know, it's, we're talking about the gamut of it, and there's an artistry in that. And then there's an artistry in being able to craft a song that sounds like the Lumineers' Hey Ho, but it's not that song.
Right.
But it has those sonic flavors. I guess it'd be like a chef trying to like cook up a dish that another maybe famous chef was known for or something.
Yeah, I think you just got to listen to the stuff and learn why does that sound as cool as it does, and what about that particular song is making this other person request that. So those are the things that like I have to learn, and why I have so many drums and change things all the time. And I think I have an advantage being a drummer for a lot of this stuff, because most licensing stuff I hear, or anything for that matter nowadays, does not have real drums. So just being able to have that element, you know, brushes, stomps, claps, like weird things, those really add to the elements, real percussion, and like the human element really adds to like why the Lumineers sing sounds so cool, because they've got stomp and claps and gang vocals and big drums and so just that's an important thing when those specific people are asking you to match it. You know, find the right instruments, find the right elements, and be able to go through. I don't think it's a thing on the higher end of the spectrum where you can just like go through your sample library and find stuff. In some circumstances, yes. But you know, then you get into that custom thing, and you need to create something quickly, and that's, I guess, where I find the passion in the whole thing. It's just like I really enjoy figuring out why that's so cool and how do I do that.
That's awesome. So, and then what kind of brought me here again today was we're a little bit of collaboration stuff too, which is so fun. And I met Mike at Hybrid Studios on the Vanguard Audio, which is not that long ago, V13 sessions. That was a lot of fun to do, and you killed it, knocked it out of the park on that. And I had a song, and some of you who've been watching my YouTube channel have seen the first and second and third kind of installment. And now the song, exactly what you're saying, like how much better to have living, breathing, live drums and a great drummer like Mike. I'm just plugging him right here. Hey, if you need drums, this is like a live drums. I think, like for me, just even hearing what Mike played to the song that we're working on here, Brave, man, it just is like, wow, it just, life just happens right there, even as it's like getting added onto and stuff. So working in that aspects, and you get this, I think, a lot, is someone sends you a track and you load it up in your Pro Tools session, and what's your first, as you're first hearing the songs, what's your process? What do you kind of go through to try and deliver something that you know, builds on that piece that they're...
There are always like, I mean, there are a million types of sessions, but to me there are two types of requests that I get all the time. It's either like, hey, we wrote this song and we want it to sound like this, or hey, here's this song, do whatever you want. You know, so it's like, you know, I don't mind either. I like the challenge on both. The do what you want leaves it much more open for me to really experiment with things. You know, like I was showing you something where I played on boxes and weird. I don't really consider anything not to be an instrument. It's like sometimes I just go around my studio and bash on everything in the room until I find something that sounds really cool.
It's like an unconventional drumming.
Just whack up a mic on it and record it because it just sounds great for that particular circumstance. So, but generally when I first listen to something, really like the first take through listening to the song, by about the end of the first chorus, I already know where I want to go with it.
Oh, that's awesome.
I just know, like, I think I know all the equipment that I have really well and know what each element does. And, you know, like I have like 8 bass drums and 50 snare drums and everything is kind of set up for a particular purpose or like way of creating a certain type of sound. So generally I'm listening to it thinking, well, this kick might work great and this thing, and I'm not always right. You know, sometimes I put it all up and I mic everything and then I record a take and I'm like, and then I pull everything down and set up some different mics. So I never really record with the same setup. I always want it to be something interesting, and I want each person that works with me on something to get a product that sounds like them. I want them to walk away being like, oh man, we have something that's like really original and it sounds great and it's a custom piece of work. You know, I don't want you to just feel like you could have like gotten programmed drums and would have been done. So yeah, my process is really just like does this need percussion? How big of a bass drum do I need? Should it be deep? Should it be high? What cymbals would work great for this thing?
That's awesome.
And sometimes I record the whole thing and then I need more elements, you know, little things, or like, you know,
yeah,
something might, you know, just add a little more, you know, like your track in particular, like I recorded it and it's got like a 16th note hi-hat thing and it worked really well, but I wanted more of that. So like when I listened back to it in the mix, that like ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta wasn't happening enough. So I added more of it, you know, like I put it in the shakers and I added some tambourines and I just felt like that was an important part that needed to be emphasized. And that wasn't something I noticed until after I recorded it.
Yeah. And I think this brings me back around to what I love, and I'm just passionate. I love like the art form of it, and even when you're collaborating with someone, it's like you have two artists kind of like coming together, and something sometimes amazing and beautiful. And I love the word like synergy. It's like creative energy comes from what you're adding in, and then I might send it off to a guitar player and he hears what you did and he hears the basis of what we did, and it starts to pool. And so taking that back to like licensing and sync, I feel like when something has that kind of story to it, like the details of something that you didn't just lay a drum track down, but you, like you're saying, you felt like something else. This keeps building it and shaping it and creating it into something greater. And then hopefully when everyone's put their pieces together, this person that's sitting there looking at some visuals and they're clicking through music, what goes behind this, here's something, and all of that artistry and character and the story, it's almost like the song has a story in it. It has your story, it has my story, it has my wife's story with her voice, and who, you know, the other,
and
the
that's
person
like, I think that's the important part of hiring real musicians, is that, you know, you're hiring the people, I think anyway, and this is what I do when I hire musicians, is that I want them to contribute what they do. You know, like I want that. I want to hear what you play and I don't want to call you and be like, play this. Because to me, I mean, I know a lot of people do that and it's cool if you need that, but I just like, I like people to hire me because they trust in, like, I'm going to add something cool to them. So, again, sometimes people hire me and they're like, I need this, but it has to be live drums. Can you do this? Sure, that's fine. But in a lot of elements, I like creating things and giving you something that's going to really add to it. And that's the benefit of like having all these people add to your work. Is that you're like, you know, you're better off being like, do this, and then also give me a couple options of like what you would do. And a lot of the time, like I get a call back from a producer just being like, I always end up doing a take at the end of my playlist that's just like, you know, a free for all. You know, like like what would I play if I like was just doing this by myself for fun now. So I always do one take like that.
Awesome.
And a lot of the time, like, there are elements from that take, I end up hearing it in a lot of stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
Because people are just like, whoa, that fill was cool. Or like, oh, I really like what you did in that section. Or like, that was cool.
That's awesome.
Just really because it's a take based purely on emotion. It's just like, I'm having fun and whatever.
That's cool.
So I think that those are good things to get from the human elements of people. Like, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? And let's see what it all brings.
Everyone has like a story almost within like their... You know.
Well, especially because we're not in the same place. If we could do every session with, 12 people in a room, cool, then we get it together.
It's so hard. That seems far more not the case anymore, and stuff gets like, pieced out and stuff like that. But and sometime I want to come back with cameras and talk gear, because I know that would be a whole nother like... We could have a series of videos probably talking about gear and stuff like that. But Mike, thanks for sharing. I think, this is such good stuff. And I love it because I don't even, sometimes I feel like I don't even care if like 30 other musicians that are passionate watch this and see this, because it's like a great, it's just great like inspiration, like sharing this kind of stuff with people and synergy. And it gets me inspired to keep doing what I'm doing. And so thanks again for sharing.
Thank you for coming.
So all right,
awesome.
All right, sweet.
All
right, peace out.